Okay, so a little video about a blues in G with these 9 chords. So this is G9, that's 3, X, 3, 2, 3, X. And it gets slid up to these 3, just these 3 notes on the D, G and B strings. It gets slid up 2 frets, making it a G13, yeah, and coming back down. Now, when you do that slide, you really don't want to hear that bass note sliding up. So now I use my thumb over the top. If you can't do that, think of your hand just slightly moving in this sort of seesaw rocking motion of pressure on the E string, and then more pressure on the D, G and B strings. Now, after you've done that let your finger release the pressure and just rest on the string. And this movement of the hand, I'm exaggerating a bit, but this slight movement of the hand, rocking movement of rocking onto the second finger on the E string and then rocking onto the other fingers on the D, G and B strings, that can help you release the pressure on the bass string but still be touching it to mute it. Take it slow because it's quite a difficult thing to get, and then you do the same sort of thing, same principle on the 9 chords with the root on the A string, which you can include the 3rd if you want, on the D string 2nd fret, or you can just leave it out. So the way I'm voicing this 9 chord, this C9 chord, is X, 3, X, 3, 3, 3, and they're being barred by my 3rd finger, so I can just slide that up 2 frets and come back down 2 frets. Now the 5 chord is going to be the D, D9, 3 chord is the C9, and the 1 chord is the G9. And as a turnaround on the 5 chord, you could do the D augmented, which is X, 5, 4, 3, 3, so I'm doing a half bar on the G and B strings, and that's a typical hammer on, and then going back to on the B string, hammering on from 3rd to 5th fret, and going back to the 3rd fret. But you don't have to do that, you can just go and you can just go to a 9 chord on the turnaround as well. Okay, so that's chord voicings and a bit of technique of how to separate the bass note and the sliding treble notes. Then little licks around it, around the chords. Use the fingers you already have on the strings as the beginning of a little lick. Yeah. Except that last one I did that. So what that allows is a sort of anchor finger. You've already got a finger on the fretboard, so why not use it for your lick? And of course these fingers on the fretboard are chord tones. They're all chord tones. That's the root, that's the flat 7, that's the 9, that's the 5th, up an octave. Yeah. So starting from any of those notes is going to work. So the first licks I was doing were using the major, the pentatonic major, and the last licks I was doing was using the pentatonic minor. So G, pentatonic major and minor. And what you want to do also is be able to visualize both of them so that you can mix them up. That's mixing shape 1, G pentatonic minor, and shape 1, G pentatonic major. So G pentatonic minor, I'm sure you know, shape 1, 3, 6, 3, 5, 3, 5, 3, 5, 3, 6, 3, 6. That's a minor, and the major 3, 5, 2, 5, 2, 5. 2, 4, 3, 5, 3, 5. And what you want to do is be able to visualize both of them so that you can take notes from both of them and mix them together, and that gives you a wider palette of sound, rather than just minor sound, which is great, and major sound, which is great, but combining them it just gives you more things you can do. Yeah, so that was combining them, and you get a wider palette. Yeah. So to aid your memorizing and visualization of those two shapes, just take it 2 strings at a time. So the major pentatonic on the top 2 strings is 3, 5 on the B string and 3, 5 on the top E string, and the minor pentatonic on the top 2 strings is 3, 6 and 3, 6. So add those together, combine them, and you get 3, 5, 6, 3, 5, 6. And then if you go up 1 fret on the top E string, you get to the major third again, but up 2 octaves. So take it 2 strings at a time and work on licks just on those 2 strings. Or you could do that little bend, that little micro bend, blues bend up from the typical thing, minor third, flat third to major third. And then, and you might feel, limited, and I want to go to other strings to make a lick. Yeah, by all means do. But just as an exercise, try to stick on 2 strings so that you really get familiar with. And of course, you can slide into any of those notes. But try to stick to 2 strings so that you get really familiar with where the positions are of the major and the minor, and then combining them becomes much easier, rather than trying to attempt to combine 6 strings at once. So then you'd move on to the next set of strings, the D and the G string. So for the minor pentatonic it's 3, 5 and 3, 5, 3, 5, 3, 5, and for the major pentatonic it's 2, 5, 2, 4. So if we combine those, and then I went to a low string, but you get the idea. So I'm getting familiar with what I can do on just those two strings and where the positions are, where the fret numbers are for both the minor and the major pentatonic, and do that for the next set of strings. So that would be finally the E and the A string. Yeah, that's minor, that's major, and of course you can put that major third either on the second fret of the A string, or it's up there as well, the 7th fret of the E string. So typically you'd do that little blues bend from the flat third to the major third. Yeah, and you may find yourself, as I did then, sort of limited of, I want to use other strings. But again, just as an exercise, even if it's not especially musical, just as an exercise, just do it for a few minutes and just really get used to trying to combine those. Trying to combine those major and minor pentatonics, because you can come up with things that you wouldn't otherwise, like just then. And yeah, I want to go to the octave, and that's on the other string, but you can do that, but you might not have come up with this. That ascending line, you might not have come up with that if you weren't just sticking to two strings, trying to combine and get familiar with major and minor pentatonic shapes. And yeah, you'll be going to the 4 chord and the 5 chord, but of course you can use, and you can get more complex, but as a basic blues you can use just the G, major and minor pentatonic, over all 3 of those chords. So at the moment that's what I'd suggest. So just for the chords, you're using that technique of separating the bass and the treble. And so that's what you're doing for the chords, and for melodic lines or phrases or licks, you're going to concentrate on using, no matter what chord you're on, concentrate on using the G, major and minor pentatonic, and combining them. And of course when you're on the 4 chord or the 5 chord, start from, for example, when you're on the 4 chord, start your lick, your single note phrase, from one of these notes that you're actually fretting, because that'll ensure that you'll be using a chord tone of the chord you're on, rather than, if I'm on the G7 and I start from the flat 7, that sounds great. But if I'm on the C9, of course, that also sounds pretty great. But it sounds good because it's carrying on the idea from the chord before, but it's not starting from a chord tone, and that when I went to a flat 7 of the chord I was going back to, the 1 chord, the G chord. So what I'm basically saying is, if you start your phrases, your licks, from one of the fretted notes, you'll be starting from a note that actually defines the chord that you're on, and that can't be a bad thing. And that's quite a long video, so I'll stop it there.